A few years back, I got a bunch of maple, and I cut it into shapes to turn on the lathe, like I always do. I think this piece right here is the piece I'm going to turn for this video. It's hard to tell. This was a while ago. And I cut the piece into a circle, and I attached a faceplate. And then I turned the piece down into a rough bowl shape. I did the outside, and then I did the inside. And then that dried for a few years. So it's been 3.5 years, I guess, since this was cut and turned. It's been drying. It's still pretty heavy, but I think it's dry. It's pretty thick. So what I was thinking would be kind of fun, there's a knot here, and there's, I think, probably the same branch, or there's a knot over here. I thought it'd be neat to mount this on the CNC and then cut out sort of a funny shape and then make a piece to fit into that shape. Maybe even make something that's segmented that fits into that shape. It would be the way to fix the defect. So I wouldn't have to cut the whole bowl in half to cut out this part. I just do the part that's actually started to crack a little bit. So the first thing to do was to put the bowl blank back on the lathe. And it had actually shrunk enough that the chuck no longer fit in the mortise that I'd made for it. So I had to make the mortise just a little bit bigger and to make it round again. And then the chuck would fit. And I could mount the bowl back on the lathe. Now this turning is to get it round again. That's kind of the big thing. And to get the walls of the bowl thinner. And to find a form that I liked, or a form that was closer to the final shape. So I went from probably a little more than an inch, maybe 1.5 inches thick walls, down to maybe a little more than 1/2 inch thick. And this got me to where I could see what the shape of the defects was going to be, as I was going to have to figure that out to figure out what to cut out. Well, that looks pretty good. So it's a lot thinner, it's a lot lighter. I have these knots to fill, so I think what I'll do now is make the piece to fill in, or the pieces. I guess there'll be 3 pieces to cut. I took some quick photos with a longish lens, and this gave me something to work with. So I brought the images into Illustrator. And then from there I could draw lines around what I wanted to cut out. And I could then use those lines as the cut pattern. And I needed to keep the radiuses of the curves bigger than the radius of my bit. The radius was going to be 3/16 because it's a 3/8 inch bit. So I did a bunch of tests on some scrap pieces of wood to make sure my plug and hole would fit, and with some tweaking. I think I had to make the hole 9/1000th of an inch bigger to get the plug to fit. And once I was fairly confident with that, I could put the bowl onto the angled table, and it's still a little bit jerry-rigged, but it works okay. And I ran the bit around, just seeing that it was going to cover what it was I wanted to cut out. And after some adjustment, I could turn the router on and actually cut out the piece that I wanted to cut out. And I could rotate the bowl to the next piece and change the angle where I needed to. On this last cutout, my gantry just barely cleared the clamps that were holding the bowl. This is what the bowl looks like with the cutouts taken out of it. So once that was done, I could start making the plugs that would go into those holes. And a vision I've had is to do a brick pattern that fits into the holes in the bowl. So it almost looks like a brick wall with stucco on it, where some of the stucco has started to come off. So I needed to make a brick pattern. I glued some thin strips of maple to some walnut. And once I did that, I could plane those down. Gluing the maple on first let me then plane the maple to a really thin dimension. And from that, I can cut out bricks. So I just cut out a lot of bricks. And I cut out some little thin pieces of mortar to go between the bricks. And then those pieces could all go together and make a pattern. Then it was a matter of gluing those together. So I started by gluing each piece into a strip and clamping those strips together and letting that dry. And once I had each strip, I could then glue those into a plane. So I'm sort of going from points, being the bricks, to lines to a plane. Now before I can glue each strip together, I had to sand the top and bottom so that they would go together without any gaps. And I could glue those together. This was fairly straightforward. Now once that dries, I can put it into the CNC table. And I had run some tests before this to make sure the pieces were going to fit, because I had only one chance with this. If I screwed it up, I would have to remake the whole thing. And as luck would have it, I screwed it up. I made little bridges to hold the pieces in place. They wouldn't come out at the end, but my bridges weren't quite big enough, or my bit was a little too deep. And the first piece popped up, and then the router hit it and damaged it. So I stopped this, and I took a step back, and I had to remake that entire piece, which took another day. So this is a new piece, which went quicker because I wasn't having to figure out what I was doing. I just made it as quickly as I could. And this time I made the little tabs or the little bridges a little bigger. I made sure the height of my bit was set right. There, you can see the bit come up a little bit. That's the bit making the little bridge. And on the second attempt, they all stayed in place. So you can see they're sort of held in place, and then you can kind of break them out. And I can then clean up the pieces, mostly to get the little broken tab off. And I test fit them into the bowl, and they seem to work. And I added some glue and put them in place. Each piece sort of had its own personality, or it went in a particular way, but it seemed to be okay. And since they're a tight fit, there was nothing really to clamp. Just put them in place and let them dry. So now I can remount the bowl on the lathe and do a final turning. It's a little bit tricky at this point, but not too hard, because you're mostly turning air at this point, and you're just catching a little bit of the added piece. But it's actually not too hard. And then I can get to the final shape and try to get to a smooth surface as well. And I can do the inside, which is pretty similar. And I got pretty thin on the bottom on this one, so I had to be really careful. And I sanded. I was having a little bit of an issue because this maple's fairly soft, and it wasn't giving me the best surface, especially on the end grain sections. But after some sanding, it turned out okay. And once the inside and the sides were done, I could turn it around and do the base. And the bowl's actually big enough I have to hold it from the inside of the rim. I can turn off the little bit of a foot that's on there. It's nice just to have a simple curve, I think, down to the bottom. Then I sanded the bottom, and it was done. With this, I kind of like the idea of the brick pattern and the holes, but I'm not sure how much I really like the look of it. The grain of the wood of the bowl is beautiful. The brick pattern provides a nice contrast, but there's something about it it's just not singing to me. It's sort of like maybe I needed to cut a few more holes in it. Like there's just not enough of the brick pattern. It was a good experiment. Thanks for watching.